Meeting February 17th to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Ruth. Is there a second?
Second.
Nicole, I saw your hand first. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. That leads us to comments from the public. Just need to make a couple of statements before we have public comment. As I usually say, we welcome public comment. If you wish to make a comment, please state your name and address for the record. Please be aware that comments are limited to 2 minutes each, and the board will limit comments on any one topic to a total of 15 minutes. Please know that the board does not respond directly to public comments. Instead, we listen carefully and will provide individual follow-up if appropriate and necessary. And finally, and very importantly, please follow our civility policy. We expect people to comply with this. Our policy states, in part, it is the intent of the Wilton Public Schools to promote mutual respect, civility, orderly conduct, and positive communication among district employees, parents, guardians, and other members of the public. Disruptive, hostile, or aggressive communication or actions will not be tolerated. So let's agree to follow the policy. Opinions are strong and emotions run high, but let's keep our tone and tenor appropriate. All right, we have a microphone and a podium set up for public comment. Is there someone who'd like to go first? Just go ahead. Just remember to state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Joshua Kesselman of 241 Catawba Road, and I'd like to speak on continuing the mask mandate. I personally feel we should continue it until we are solidly out of the red zone, as originally advised, to say that there's no community spread. Sorry. I personally think we should continue the mask mandate till we are solidly out of the red zone, maybe as low as less than 5 cases per 100,000 on a rolling 2-week average. I do not think it's wise to drop the mask mandate, even though we can on the 1st of March, until at least a week or two after a break where we are likely to have picked up extra virus in the community as people travel far and wide, as is their choice. And I'd like to point out that masks work best when they are protecting others from you. The point of a mask, although I wear one that helps protect me from others, is to protect others from you should you not know that you had the virus, so that you do not spread it to people who are immunocompromised, unable to get vaccinated for other reasons, or cannot protect themselves. Thank you.
Hi, Charlie Bowling, 209 Range Road. I come here today to voice my concerns about the mask and how I think the mask should be removed. I'm not wearing a mask because I want you to see my humanity. I have 4 girls, 3 of which are in the school district, and I do not wish for them to grow up in a world where periodically they're going to be forced to wear a mask. I can't tell you how absurd this has all become because I think you already know it. You go into a restaurant with a mask on, you sit down, you take your mask off. You wear a mask on an airplane and you breathe the same air for 4 hours. We all know this is absurd. I wish we weren't here, but we are. Other school districts are recognizing the absurdity, and I wish you guys would do that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. May I unmask while I speak? Is that good?
Sure.
Okay. Hi, Renee Rafferty, 45 Scarlet Oak Drive. I'm a nurse, Wilton resident, and mother of 3 children in our schools. I hold my master's degree from the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, and I work throughout this pandemic as a nurse. My family and I are vaccinated and boosted. I choose to tell you about myself only to ensure that you don't put me in a box and prejudge me as fringe, uneducated, or anti-science. Science and healthcare define my career. I support mask choice in schools because COVID is not the most dangerous public health threat facing our children, but mental health and emotional well-being is. While politicians play games with federal funding and partisan politics, our children are suffering. The most popular statement we hear now is, "We have to keep the kids safe." Please define safe for me. Here's what we know about COVID right now. The infection rate is very low, hospitalizations are very low, and our vaccination rate is very high. And here what we know about how our kids are doing. Here is what we, the adults of America, have done to our children. Experts have noted that mental health has become an epidemic within the pandemic for our children. A recent national poll found that 46% of parents reported that their teenage child has developed a new or worsening mental health condition since the pandemic began. Over the last year, mental health professionals have witnessed a massive increase in depression, suicidal ideation, and self-harm behaviors. The pandemic has taken a serious toll on our kids' mental health. Make no mistake, what we are seeing now with this mental health crisis is only the beginning. It will take decades to finally realize what we have done. Decades of research document the serious long-term consequences of chronic childhood stress. It can alter the structure of the brain and nervous system, which impacts learning, memory, decision-making, and more. For some children, it manifests in disruptive or aggressive behavior, poor grades, drugs or alcohol use, or a tendency to form unhealthy relationships. Stress can cause lifelong health problems, from heart disease to cancer. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
2 more seconds. Thank you
All
so
right, go
much.
ahead.
We are begging you to save our children. Remove the burden of the pandemic from their shoulders. Masks tell our children that they are wrong. They are infectious, they are dangerous, they are less than, there are invisible threats all around them, that they need to be on high alert at all times, that they cannot be children. We have the opportunity to do the right thing. If not now, when? When is enough enough?
Thank you. Hi.
Can I remove this?
Yeah.
My name is Annie Chochos. I live on 37 Long Meadows Road. I'm a parent of a third grader in Cider Mill. I understand this is a budgetary meeting, but I feel strongly about mask choice, and I would like my voice to be heard. I am speaking in support of families having the option of whether or not to wear masks. Masks are a divisive issue in this country. If the school moves to mask choice, I would like to know what steps is in its plan to take to prevent the transition. Sorry, let me read that again. I would like to know what steps in your plan to take to prevent the transition from becoming a divisive among the students. I believe it's imperative to think carefully and thoughtfully on how this will be articulated to our students, from teachers and staff, to embrace and respect each student's and family's decision on this matter. This is an opportunity to teach our children to respect each other's individual choices. I also would like to echo questions many others have asked. Will a virologist be included or consulted as a health advisor? This question has been asked numerous times, including by BOE members, and it remains unanswered. With all due respect, the issue is beyond the realm of a pediatrician. Regardless of how well respected and credentialed, I would like to see a virologist be part of the district's health and advisory team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gretchen Mancuso, and I live at 24 Apple Tree Lane. Yeah. I'm the mother of 3 girls in the school system. At the beginning of the pandemic, I accepted masks as a way to keep everyone in school, which is where students need to be. 2 years into this pandemic, however, with vaccination possible and available to all members of the school community, except for our preschoolers, and the fact that people are becoming infected despite being vaccinated and wearing a mask, I cannot justify asking students to wear them any longer. We just watched a Super Bowl in which thousands of people were on top of each other and unmasked, yet we continue to tell our children to wear a mask every day. We have become hyper-focused on one aspect of their health, while many others have been negatively impacted by the pandemic, namely their mental health, and they need our attention. I am also a teacher at a nearby district. Masks, in my experience, have limited student communication, engagement, and collaboration. I believe it is time for children to look at one another as more than sources of a virus. It is time for them to interact and socialize at school in a more age-appropriate and normal way. It is time for students to feel less isolated and more connected. And it is time that we as adults teach children how to live with this virus because it is never going to fully disappear. We, the adults, need to set the example for how to do this. Finally, it is time for students and teachers to really see each other. Each day when I take a class out for mask breaks, it really strikes me how rarely I see their full faces. To say this in February, halfway through the academic year, is incredibly sad to me. I am not discounting or glossing over the concerns of those with immune-compromised family members. Mask choice does not take away their right to a mask. It simply removes the requirement for all students to wear a mask. Finally, when mask choice is implemented, it is up to us, the adults, to demonstrate respect for each family's choice. The divisiveness that pervades this issue cannot trickle down to students any more than it already has. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Adam Hames. I live at 14 Pin Oak Lane in Wilton. My daughter goes to Miller Driscoll. You know, this is the sad reality, is that everywhere I go in Wilton, I don't have to wear a mask. My kids don't have to wear a mask. There's not a single place in Wilton that they go to that they have to wear a mask, except school, where they spend 90% of their day. My son was born with a medical condition. Yeah, another medical story, I get it. At 1 year old, I had to put a feeding tube in his stomach because he doesn't eat with his mouth. I spent thousands of dollars that I don't have to get him to eat with his mouth. Speech therapist every day after school, special dentist because he doesn't chew with his mouth, every week after school, and every month at another clinical trial. And you know what? All that money was well spent and it worked. He started eating with his mouth. Then you guys put these mask mandates in place, and he was no longer interested in eating with his mouth anymore. And it's cost me over $100,000 in financial burden. Back to speech therapists, back to special doctors to pull his teeth out because his teeth won't fall out anymore. And I had to put another feeding tube in his stomach because I got to keep this mask on his face all day long because you guys make him wear it, and I can't take it anymore. It's got to stop. Mask choice on the 28th. Put it in place. Vote yes. I'm done with this. And I know everybody here agrees with me. All right? Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Marielle Wolberg, 15 Azalea Lane. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I came to the last meeting and to this meeting. I understand both sides. I don't know if you remember from last meeting, I highly encourage parents to stay respectful with this because we all have our own opinion on it. However, the messaging that came out after the last meeting was very discouraging. I don't believe we had a room of bullying parents or people being disruptive as they came out in the reporting and as the emails displayed. They were passionate parents that wanted to be heard, and now we have a police presence outside. I asked the gentleman if there was a problem, and he said he was asked to be here tonight, as if something the last meeting warranted that. This message of fear is not healthy just for our kids, but it's not healthy for us either. We live in this state of fear perpetually now. And when does it end? Where is the off-ramp? I get that this is a very scary thing, and we're all doing everything we can to make sure that these measures are being taken. But it is something we have to live with. The rest of the country has moved to an endemic phase. There are very few places that are pockets like Connecticut or like our area of Connecticut that are still in the place that we're in. Our children have the mental health problems you heard about, the developmental problems you've heard about. Bullying has become little boys in my daughter's second grade class saying, "Pull up your mask," constantly, and her coming home crying saying, "Mommy, I've got no friends because I can't talk to people because I don't know who's smiling at me." My family is in Florida, and Florida has taken on many different iterations of whatever COVID reputation you want to declare. But in Florida, the children are smiling and free, and you can put it to the warm weather and say that it's because they have more opportunity to be outside. But their school day is very much the same. They're still within the confines of a building throughout the day during school. And yet, we're not seeing spikes there. We're not seeing crazy things. I'm sorry, I'll finish up. My question to you is something to think about, just further beyond the mask debate, because I know you've already made the declaration with the recommendation for mask optional, so thank you for that. If the state declares that masks have to come back on, will you continue to fight? Will you continue to say, locally, we need to look at what's going on? Will you continue to establish a metric system with the experts that you bring in for Wilton to fight for us? Most of us moved here because our school system is a school system of excellence, of leadership. And I fear that we haven't been leaders with this. We've been following, we've been waiting for some sort of guidance from an organization that keeps changing its mind. So I do ask that maybe we look past February 28th and think about what that will look for us if the state decides to declare masks back and if it's still worth the fight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I actually wasn't going to speak tonight. I'm Deborah List, and I live at 5 West Twin Lane. And I don't know if my son will choose to speak, but those of you who know me and know my family story, and I'm going to turn so all of you can hear this, because many of you have spoken about the fact that COVID isn't a problem for most children. And many of you have spoken about your children's emotional issues. I'm the parent of a child with cancer in Wilton High School. So when you talk about fear, I want you to understand that the fear is that COVID could kill my child and kill other children with life-threatening medical conditions. And I'm not here to speak against going to personal choice. Everyone should have the personal choice. I'm also a PhD in public health, and I teach public health. But I want you to understand that the words that you're using and the tones that you're using and the verbiage that you're using is incredibly selfish. None of the fears you're talking about are the same that the fear is in my house with my family. And if the cases go up, yes, it will. It will affect my family, and it will make him afraid. And people,
Yeah, Deborah,
okay,
tone
I
it
will.
down.
I will tone it
Tone
down.
it down, thank you.
I will tone it down. I find it very hard for people to talk about these things without understanding what it's like to walk in the shoes of a family. And there are quite a few of us in Wilton
Okay.
who have children who have life-threatening medical conditions. The students who spoke last time spoke very eloquently. The first student who got up spoke about the kindest friend he had who suffers from a life-threatening illness. That's my child. Everyone in the senior class knows what he's going through. And so I would ask that when we think about this, we also think about how to speak to our families and our children when we make choices about how to protect everyone, not just ourselves, not just our own needs, but everyone around us, because that is the portrait of a graduate. And I have had many conversations with Kevin about what we need to do to keep my child safe, because his safety falls into a whole different category than all of the other issues that we've talked about tonight and in the past few weeks. And thank you for having that conversation with me even tonight, because if we do go mask optional on February 28th, he can't go to school that week.
Thank you. All right, hey, whoa. I understand the emotion, but before we hear the next speaker, come on up. After that, it will be 15 minutes, and I'll just ask the board if we should extend it or not, all right? So just hold tight.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I am not sure, and I don't know if anyone here, anyone anywhere is sure what mandates work. We've had masks, COVID is still here. We've had quarantining, COVID is still here. We've had social distancing.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you just give us your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Florentina Nica, 9 Forest Lane.
Okay, thank you.
But we've had 3 months of intense lockdown. We've had masks, and unfortunately, COVID is still here. So I can't, and I'm so sorry that some families are more medically susceptible to consequences of wearing masks. In my family, we have a problem with that. I have a medical condition. I was in the, ER in January. I couldn't breathe, even without a mask. So, and some families have the other problem. But the thing is that adults have been putting pressure on children and making it their responsibility to keep the schools open. If you don't follow the mandates, if you don't wear a mask, we're going to go back to remote learning, which we know does not work. And I think that's really atrocious. It should be the adults' responsibility to keep the schools open. It should be the adults' responsibility to find something that works. Yes, trial and error. We tried, it didn't work. We need to try something else. And it should also be parental choice, especially with these things that we still have had spikes with, whether they should send their children to schools with masks or not, because everyone is different. So children should be worrying about what children used to worry about, and we shouldn't use remote learning and virtual meetings as a threat for obedience, because that's what we're doing. We're threatening, if you don't follow, we're gonna have a remote learning session, even though that's useless. If you don't follow, we're going to have a remote or virtual meeting. What did we do before COVID with that? Because I'm an older generation, I guess, and I'm not so used to virtual meetings, even though it's been around for 2 years, and I find it very difficult and impersonal. And I can't feel the sentiments around me. So I ask you to please keep in mind the needs of each and every child, each and every household, and help us overcome this barrier of mandates that still have COVID here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there more people who'd like to speak at this point? I just need a board vote, but I just need a sense of how many more. 1, 2.
One quick comment. I know that a couple people are texting that they have hand raises online. So if they had an opportunity, even if it's at the end, just.
Thank you. Good point.
Somebody over here that wants to speak.
I already spoke, but I
Yeah, no, we should allow people remote as well. So can I have a motion to extend for 15 more minutes?
I so move.
Is there a second? All in favor? Okay. All right, let's hear.
I'll wait.
Okay, I'm not sure who can you get a hand raised?
Yeah, how about just go right in order?
Thank you for reminding me.
So we'll have, there's a gentleman, Kevin Regan.
All right, Kevin Regan, you're recognized. If you could unmute yourself.
Oh my goodness, we can't hear.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Is that our problem or his problem? All right, I'm sorry, it appears your microphone isn't working. Can you hear us?
We can, okay.
All right, we can't hear you, though.
Yeah.
Okay, what? Okay, Mr. Regan, I'm sorry, until your microphone works, it's going to be difficult, so we're going to go on to the next speaker, and I apologize.
Let's have somebody, Bob O'Donnell, can you just do a mic check to make sure that it's not our Zoom?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I can't hear well either, Dr. Smith.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, Chiara Garcia? Kira Garcia?
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Kira Garcia. I live on 34 Wilton Woods Road, and I'm a senior at Wilton High School, and I'm here to talk about why I'm in favor of a mask mandate staying in place in Wilton High School. In March of 2020, my grandfather died from COVID-19. He had caught COVID from a nurse because there was no mask mandate put in the hospital that he was staying in, and it was spread to him, and he passed away. If a mask mandate had been put in place, he might still be here today. Masks are extremely effective in stopping the spread of COVID, and with people who are immunocompromised in the school, it would be an immense risk for them to go to school with no mask mandate. Wearing a mask is not a choice. If one person doesn't have a mask on and they have COVID, they spread it to everyone near them. The point of wearing a mask is that everyone wears it. A lot of the arguments about removing masks has to do with people wanting to go back to some sort of normalcy, but unfortunately, we cannot get back to that. This pandemic has changed us all, and thinking that removing masks will bring us back to a life before is absurd and unrealistic. Everyone wants to live like that again, but now is not the time. Every time a mask mandate is lifted, the numbers go up. And once a mask mandate is put back in place, they go down. Masks have made people feel safe in school. They've made me feel safe in school. And removing a mask mandate will just create more separation between students who wear masks and students who don't. I would like to end by saying that the events on February 3rd are the reason why I'm here. And they brought up feelings in me that I haven't felt since my grandfather passed away from COVID. I think that now is not the time to make masks optional. If anything, wait till this year is over so we may have a chance at not wearing masks for the next school year and the upcoming grades so they can have a normal senior year in high school, the class of 2023. My brother is in the class of 2023, and I think that if we keep masks now, we can get to a point where we can remove them by next year.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I don't know if there's anyone else on
There-
that, or Julie?
Yeah. Julie Corbett, you're, yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Julie Corbett, 41 Quail Ridge Road. Thank you for hearing tonight. I know this is a budget meeting, and I wish that we were able to focus on the school budget as much as important as that is. For some context, I'm a former school board member in Norwalk, and I also have worked in education consulting for the last 12 years. I know this is challenging work. I know this is controversial. Unfortunately, this decision related to masks is controversial. I also understand the desire from so many families and community members to move towards mask optional. I'm concerned that there is often a perception that moving towards mask optional or removing masks in general is going to all of a sudden make some of the conditions and the implications that have developed over the course of the pandemic go away, and unfortunately that's not the case. We will still be working to recover missed learning, interrupted learning. We will still be working to address social and emotional health, and we will desperately need to be working on mental health related to both students as well as adults related to implications from the pandemic. My biggest concern, and I'm a parent of a kindergartner and a 2-year-old, so I've felt this very deeply. My biggest concern is that moving towards mask optional, we need to tie this to clear indicators of community transmission, vaccination rates. There's absolutely a way to do this and a way to do it well and safely. And I've been incredibly supportive of Wilton's efforts to date regarding careful COVID mitigation strategies. And I think, I obviously look towards moving towards the endemic stage of the pandemic, but we're not quite there yet, especially as we're about to go towards February vacation where many families will be traveling again. I too want our kids to be mask-free, but that decision has to be made in regards to clinical evidence, federal public guidance to get us there. I also recognize that the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and while they're working on it, they have not yet updated their guidance related to masks and in-school transmission. And I believe that Wilton Public Schools have had a very thoughtful and strategic approach. And there was a statement made a couple of weeks ago from Dr. Smith about moving towards and how that decision-making process was going to be made. And I'm concerned that so far the policy that's come out does not include any simple metrics. Simply saying cases are down or we'll monitor the data isn't enough detail to guide a decision of this magnitude. So I fully encourage a careful, considered plan that includes factors like vaccination rates, case numbers, community transmission rates, rates of boosters, especially since some of that immunity is going to be wearing off soon, hospitalization rates for adults and children, the continued ventilation strategies, and the community impact. Just one more second and I'll wrap up. I also would also recommend potentially looking at a phased approach, starting at the high schools which have higher vaccination rates, trying it out there for a few weeks, seeing what happens, and then moving to the next level down at school, as opposed to doing a blanket opening. As a parent of a kindergartner and a 2-year-old, where we're not able to get our youngest vaccinated yet, we're completely reliant on the community making continued strong steps towards keeping our family safe and our children in school and our ability to do our jobs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, you're identified as Fawn Place, but we don't see your name. You're on the air.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Stacy. I'm at 31 Fawn Place. I have 2 children in the Wilton Public School District, one in the high school and one at Cider Mill. And I am here tonight, or virtually here tonight, to ask for mass choice. Mass choice doesn't take away anything from anybody that would like to protect themselves or their children from whatever they are protecting themselves from, whether it be COVID, the flu, strep throat, whatever. Wear a mask. But for the rest of us that are not interested in this anymore, that it does not make sense anymore, please. We just spent the weekend watching a Super Bowl where hundreds of thousands of people were unmasked together. Our children are together after school in activities. It is unrealistic at this point to continue to wear masks in school or to mandate it at any degree. You can't explain it to them. I'm also just so sad for this narrative that we continue to place on our children, where they believe that for some reason they are the reason that their teachers will get sick, their teachers' families will get sick. It is unfair to place this burden on our children and have them believe that they are some vessel of illness and make them wear masks when adults do not need to in public or in restaurants or at concerts or at sporting events. Please just allow us parents the opportunity to make the choice for our children, for our students in school. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there someone in the audience? President?
Hi, how are you? Phil Heatretus, Heatretus family. We live at 68 St. John's here in Wilton. Really refreshing tonight to be here to see how many people are in favor of moving towards the mass choice. I think over the last few months, kind of watching the news change a little bit, I think there's some conversation in the room about, tying the decision to the data and the rates and how many hospitalizations are happening. We've been doing that for the last 2 years, and the only reason that I'm taking this off when I come up here is because these masks have been on our children for the last 2 years, and they have not done the job, right? If schools were the problem with the transmissibility, I'm pretty sure the federal government would have come in and not been advocating for the ability to keep schools open, to keep our children learning. There's a vital service that your teams are providing to our students, and it's done amazing things for my son, and the ability for that to get a lot better when this mask comes off is what I'm here advocating for. And I'll end on that. I'm just hoping that we continue to move in the right direction with mass choice taking effect on 3/1. Good luck to all of us. So thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you.
And hear me out.
Okay.
Oh, it's the gentleman from earlier tonight.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Did we lose him?
Hold on a second.
Deb, hold on.
Hey, bud.
Oh,
You
I'm
gotta
so
come and talk to us.
sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, just a little
Perfect.
closer.
Nice
There
and
you go.
loud. There you go.
Nice and loud.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm 7 years old, and I don't want my mask on anymore. And I want to see my friends' faces. Thank you.
Is he ready to go? So, Deb, we have Kevin
Hi guys, I'll be
Reagan.
quick.
Yeah.
All right, and then
Brian
go ahead.
Dicklacker, 116 Pipers Hill Road. First, I'd like to say to Sierra, very sorry for your loss of your grandfather. It's horrible. This virus has taken a lot of lives. It's been bad. That was a different virus than we have now. That's a fact. That's science. The virus Omicron has 30 mutations to it. It's much more transmissible, and it's much more mild. It's less of a problem. And that's how viruses evolve. And that's a fact. That's science. You guys can look it up. Okay? 73%, it's estimated, 73% of this nation right now has immunity to Omicron. Okay? Delta's gone. Omicron pushed it out. Okay? Omicron's the dominant strain right now. The next strain, variant, it'll be more mutated. It'll be weaker. Okay? That's how viruses go. All right? We are in the endemic phase. Okay? It's time that we started taking our lives back. There are outliers. There are people who are immunocompromised. There are people like your son. And I'm very sorry for your situation. I am. But the masses should not have to carry the weight of the individuals that can make their own choices to protect themselves, especially when we have a much different virus than we had a year ago, 2 years ago. Okay, that's a fact. It's a fact. Okay, so please, mass choice. Let us parents choose for our children how we want to protect them. That's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Regan, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, my name is Kevin Regan. My address is 16 Moulton Acres. I'd like to voice my opinion that I'm for mass choice. The kind of two reasons that I have is my youngest son is 3 years old, and he's having speech development delays because he can't see the lips moving from his teachers. The other point that I just kind of wanted to bring up is that my so sorry. So I had 3 points, but I'll only mention 2. The second one is that your eyes are actually able to contract the disease, and for the past 2 years, we've effectively not had a mask covering our eyes. So it was just something that I thought I would bring up, that you can still contract something even though you're covering noses and mouths. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of voice those 2 points, and my I guess I will say the third point. My father passed away 8 weeks ago from COVID pneumonia, and that really still hasn't changed my view that masks don't seem to make a lot of sense. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, we have time for one more speaker in the room, and then we'll proceed with our agenda.
David Schwartz, 5 Westman Lane. However you call it, parent choice, mask optional, it's no different than red light's optional. It doesn't work. You don't stop at a red light, you're going to kill someone else. You don't wear a mask, you could hurt someone else. And I think they're really the same thing, and either you do it or you don't do it. But having it optional won't work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have time for just like 30 seconds? No?
All right, 30 seconds, but we do
Deborah,
want to move
I just
on.
want to address you. We've known each other for some time. You know some of my personal situation, and my heart beats for you, and I know it's so emotional, but I'll tell you that you're fighting for your child's life, and I am fighting for my child's life as well. The mental health issue and the mental health struggle is unbelievably challenging.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, there is time for public comment at the end of the agenda, but we need to move on right now. Consent agenda, is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
I'll second. I guess we should vote on it. All in favor? Yes?
Aye.
All right, thank you. I do not have a report. Superintendent?
Nope.
Committee reports, business ops did not meet.
We're going to save our report.
Okay, and
Policy, we'll save our report.
and teaching and learning. Okay, That brings us to COVID update.
Great.
Dr. Smith.
Thank you. So my recommendation has not changed from what I shared with you 2 weeks ago. So I am still recommending that the Wilton Public Schools transition to a mask optional environment for students K-12 and a mask recommended environment for our preschool students. The primary difference there is that students in the preschool aren't yet eligible for vaccination. So therefore, I'd recommend that all who are in the preschool wear masks. I also want to note, as part of that recommendation, we don't have discretion. I'll do the best I can. We don't have discretion over what happens with buses. And so per federal regulations, masks will still be required on school buses. That's a federal regulation, and we don't have discretion at this point to change that policy. So it will be the expectation that students conform with that policy. I think in thinking about the timing of this, we recognize that many in our community have concerns about the transition to a mask optional environment, and that for some, those concerns are elevated because the proposal is to implement the policy following the week-long break. So what I'm suggesting to help ensure a smooth transition back to school and to mitigate against any additional spread of the virus is that we ask families to test prior to returning to school. And then should the test be positive, they follow the isolation protocols and also contact the school nurse. We do have a supply, a fairly large supply of at-home tests, and so depending on how the board votes tonight, I'll send some information out, and if families need at-home tests, we can provide them. They can pick them up from the school nurse at school. I would also add that we maintain a small supply of N95 and KN95 masks. So if students needed a mask, they could, the parents could contact the principal and we could provide a mask through the principal's office. So like I wrote to you back on the 3rd, the rationale for moving in this direction is, there's several points here. One, we have been following the guidance of the Department of Public Health since the onset of the pandemic. And at this point, per the governor's press conference a couple weeks ago, the commissioner of the Department of Public Health now endorses a mask optional policy for schools. I've also continued to be in touch with our medical advisor, who also endorses this plan to move forward. We continue to look at our vaccination rates, and so though our preschool students are not yet eligible for a vaccine, in our other grades, our vaccination rates are high and getting higher. I would offer again that 97% of our staff are fully vaccinated. As of today, 93.7% of our 12 to 17-year-olds here in Wilton have had 2 doses, and 43.7% are boosted. Among our 5 to 11-year-olds, 48.24% of them have had 2 doses of the COVID vaccine. And looking at our daily case rates, our average daily case rate continues to decline. In Fairfield County, the average daily case rate has fallen to 18.1 per 100,000. That's a metric I track on COVID Act Now, and that number has fallen, by half over just the last week and by half again over 2 weeks. The Department of Public Health data for Wilton also shows a marked decline. The data that was updated on that website today is reporting 16.7 cases on average for the weeks between January 30th and February 12th. So it's lagging, and again, if you're tracking over time, those numbers have fallen pretty substantially. And then most locally in our schools, we continue to witness, since the start of January, a sharp decline in the numbers of new cases. Today we had no new cases, and we're reporting a total of 10 since last Thursday. So our case rate's fallen off pretty substantially. We're averaging about 1 to 2 a day. So, really positive move in the right direction since we've returned from the holiday break back in January. With respect to other mitigation strategies, we'll continue to offer home tests and recommend people get tested when they're exposed. We will consider the resumption of contact tracing upon guidance from the Connecticut Department of Public Health. We don't have guidance yet. We're waiting for that. There's nothing official that's been released. And there are many questions that people have. I think the Department of Public Health needs to answer some of these questions on our behalf. Like we have been, we'll continue to maximize ventilation. We'll continue to promote social distancing to the extent reasonable, including in our cafeterias and other large meeting spaces. We'll continue to promote hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. We'll continue to offer weekly surveillance testing for both students and staff. And then we'll continue to promote self-monitoring for symptoms and isolation and testing at the onset of COVID symptoms. We'll continue to follow the Department of Public Health quarantine and isolation guidance, and then we'll continue to provide masks to students who want them and may not have their own when they're on site. And then, as I've said now a couple of times, as long as we have them in supply, we'll continue to provide at-home tests to staff and families who request them. So as we're thinking about this change, I think in my mind, step one is to transition to mask optional, and then we monitor that change for a period of time. And should case rates continue to remain stable or decline, or we don't experience a substantial increase in student or staff absences, then we can look at stepping back from other mitigation strategies. If the trend goes in the opposite direction and we start to see a spike, then I think we need to look at if there's an outbreak, where that outbreak is, and then I think we need to consider the plan and reconsider masking in some form if that's the primary strategy to slow the spread. Let me see if there's anything else. So just, I think that one of the linchpins here for us is the Department of Public Health guidance, and so I'm hopeful that we'll have it soon. We have another call scheduled with the State Department of Education tomorrow morning, and I'm hoping to get some further information there, and I'll let the board know. But at this point, there are some other questions that I think we need that group to weigh in on, and then we can plan forward. I think the next step for us communication-wise is, depending on how you treat this recommendation, we publish this information to families tonight, and then, with the sincere hope that we get some additional information from the Department of Public Health, we'd send out a follow-up communication to our families next week in advance of students returning to school on the 28th. That's it.
Okay. All right. We may have questions or comments. I don't know who would like to begin.
I'm assuming that you talked to the staff about this and that they're comfortable with the plans going forward?
I cannot speak to the staff's comfort. I shared this information back on February 3rd. I've spoken to a couple of staff members, and I've heard from maybe a few more in writing, but I can't speak to the majority.
So are we gonna wait for guidance from DPH to see if there's a positive, an unmasked first grader, an unmasked unvaccinated first grader contracts COVID? We're waiting for DPH to see what quarantine rules are gonna follow?
So some of the bigger questions that are out there are the contact tracing question, right? Because that was something we had been engaged in contact tracing for some time, and then quarantining exposed students. So that's a question. The state made the change earlier this year to a screen and stay approach where students who are exposed were allowed to remain in school. So in light of the mask removal, I think the DPH needs to weigh in and make a recommendation. Would they continue a screen and stay approach, or would they recommend a quarantine approach? Okay. I think it's fair to say, and I think we would choose to do this anyway, if a student is positive, that student needs to follow the isolation guidelines.
I think DPH.
Wait, let's
I'm sorry.
No,
I was just saying I agree.
Oh, okay, I
If you
just,
test positive, you need to isolate.
But I would also ask DPH if there's a way to ask them for guidance on the return to school after day 5 that was
Right.
also predicated on mask wearing for an additional 5 days. So I would hope that
Yes.
there would be guidance on that as well. And if there's a way to push them to make guidance on that as
Yeah,
well.
so that's an important
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
okay, I've looked over our original Board of Ed goals from the fall, and one of them is to ensure the health and safe school environment for all students during the impact from COVID. And it says, in part, regular review COVID-related health data, research, and guidance recommended by the superintendent, the health and medical experts and agencies. So, translated, that means that we needed to be guided by medical and health expertise and scientific information. So in your recommendation, I hear that this is not just okay, mass optional, it's based on some medical, scientific, expert advice. It's not from everybody, but when you, what I heard is the medical advisor, you looked at vaccination rates.
Yeah.
You looked at the percent of vaccination rates by each school and by staff. You looked at case rates declining and rapidly so. You looked at the community of Wilton data, the Wilton Public Schools data, and the Fairfield County data. We had one question about a virologist, and I'm going to substitute epidemiologist for that, and I don't, perhaps there's a huge distinction, but I know that we had consulted one informally earlier. My only recommendation might be to make that maybe a more permanent relationship in addition to our medical advisor, to add, we don't have to do that tonight, but something for you to think about.
Yeah.
Because I do think that, we've got to sort of put the pieces together on the health and the safety and the experts. And I think as long as we're guided by that, and we're also trying to weigh what a school environment should be, and we all agree that masks detract from that, to say the least. So I think it's a good plan. And so what I would like to do tonight is move this to an action item, and I'll make a motion, hopefully there'll be a second, and we'll vote on it. So can I have a motion to move the plans for post-February 28th mitigation strategies to an action item?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mandy, I'm so sorry, I never asked if you had a comment. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
No, actually, I just wanted to say that I strongly believe this is the right way to go, and I also think, I just want to acknowledge the other local towns that have done this: Westport, Ridgefield, Darien, Buchanan, Weston, Greenwich as well.
Sure. Okay, so is there,
Can I add one thing?
oh, of course.
In our list of people that we're reaching out to, at
Yes.
some point, can we also consider a social emotional person? I know we consult with Silver Hill sometimes with some of our workshops that have been presented.
A mental health expert? Sure.
And I think
Let's
along
weigh in.
those lines, I would also like to see, how we are going to approach this and communicate this with our students in the classroom, and have a plan in place that's age appropriate and school building appropriate as we move into, situations where it will be difficult for kids to navigate a new environment where some people are wearing masks and some people aren't, where a teacher may be, or maybe a teacher is not, and kind of understanding, social relationships around that. And also understanding that there may be, kids who might have a hard time and peer pressure on both ends.
Yep, yeah. I think when you said, Dr. Smith, you want it either be a transition and, obviously self-test is one, physical stuff for after vacation. But I think Ruth's point is well taken that, and we've heard it here tonight as well. The mental health piece and how we transition and message to kids that, respect choice, understand personal choice, that all of those elements, and we have great staff, but we need to kind of think fast for
Sure.
some wording that we could encourage families to use and also teachers to use.
I think that this then becomes a community decision.
Yeah.
And it's, community ownership of us making this decision and transitioning into an endemic environment that doesn't necessarily come without risks. And how we treat each other in that landscape is important to me.
Okay,
Is there
so.
can I just add one thing?
Oh, yeah, just-
There was something in an email yesterday which said that the most common symptom that doctors see in COVID right now is a runny nose. Is there some way some families, my family, have managed to avoid COVID completely. Is there a way to educate everyone, like, these are the symptoms that are, these are what you should look out for now? That, it's not the loss of smell, it's an up-to-date version of what Omicron presents like in children.
We can certainly share that again. I feel like, we do send out a weekly communication that not many people read anymore. But, we provide, yes, so I think the simple answer is of course. And just on your point, Ruth, about how we're, planning to talk to kids, I have a meeting scheduled with our principals tomorrow morning, and that is the agenda item. And so we'll have, some information ready to go, and certainly, we know our staff is very skilled in this area already.
The practicalities of a classroom, with kids wearing masks and kids not wearing masks, and how's that going to look? How's that going to play out for a teacher?
I'm not sure I understand what your question is.
So
driving
some
at.
children are going to come to school with masks on, and some
Yes.
children are going to come to school with no masks on. And is the teacher going to be the one to monitor that, or is that is that up to the child?
That's good. There's a potential challenge there, and I don't
I
believe
think a
that we
huge
could
challenge.
ask our teachers to police mask wearing. I don't
Exact-
think that's appropriate or fair.
I agree, but I don't know how that's going to, just the optics of it and just the practicalities of
Sure.
a classroom. And little kids are going to be walking in with masks and some without masks, rightly so, but how is that going to play out in a day?
we're not. I don't think we're going to be in the business of keeping track of who does and who doesn't. I think now developmentally, our teachers teach. That's what they do. So if they're aware that there's a young person in the classroom who's wearing a mask, then I suspect the teacher will, if need be, just, oh, hey, I see you're wearing a mask, and do what they do quite naturally. And then I think, the other point is that was raised just a moment ago is about just, the point about acceptance and choice. But, our teachers are wonderful at developing community in their classrooms, and so this will be just one more piece.
One more layer, yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Thank goodness we have outstanding teachers.
We do.
Yeah. All right, so, we never voted on whether we can make this an action item, even though we had a motion and a second, and then we had a discussion. So, is there, all in favor of moving this item to an action item, please raise your hand. Okay, none opposed. All right, I took really awful notes, so I'm gonna try to get this motion right. I'd like to approve Dr. Smith's recommendations to move to an mask optional policy starting February 28th for students K-12, and a recommended mask policy for students in pre-K. The rationale is based on scientific and medical guidance from our medical advisor, examining vaccination rates, looking at case rates at the county, community, and school level, understanding that mitigation strategies will continue, that there will be planning and sensitivity around the issue of transition and messaging for students and teachers, and that all of this will be monitored and subject to modification based on DPH information if it, needs to be modified somehow. And that we recommend considering an epidemiologist and a mental health expert be added to our list of medical and scientific and health experts. I'm going to stop there. Is there a second? Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Jen. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ruth. Okay. Any further discussion?
Should the idea of the testing be put in that motion? No, okay.
He can do that.
Part of the
Okay.
plan.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, that passed unanimously. All right, moving on. It's now time to talk about our budget. Oh, come on, guys.
The budget. I have an unvaccinated 4-year-old. I'm going to be keeping mine on.
Okay. I just thought you'd want to stay for budget, but,
Do you guys I saw the visitor thing that came up today
Yes.
due to COVID, so that's out now.
That is.
that's
Yeah.
law. Yeah.
What do you guys want to do about buses? Are we allowing kids to go on other people's buses yet?
Do you know what? I'm interested in doing that. I want to sit tight.
Okay.
And I think just, it goes back to how we've just proceeded. Like it or not, we have taken a conservative approach, and I think that's okay. And so I'd like to see what the next couple of weeks shake out and look like, and then we can start walking some of these things back.
Okay. All right. Budget discussion. No, I'm sorry, it's not a discussion. This is review and discuss.
Discuss and approve.
I'm sorry, discuss and approve. What am I talking about? Where are we? Discuss and approve superintendent's proposed 2022 to 23 budget. We've had 3 workshops, a joint Board of Finance meeting. We've had 2 of our own meetings to discuss the budget. Tonight, we have some time left to discuss if we wish. Otherwise, we need to move to approve or not. Dr. Smith, I know you have an update to your proposal, so could you go through that for
I
us?
sure will. So I left a memo at your places, and I'll just walk you through. So we've made, in the last couple of weeks, we've made some revisions to the budget. So in the defined benefit line, we've reduced that line from an estimated $560,000 to $448,000. That was based on the most recent figures that came in from the actuary. Debbie sent me a question yesterday about, is there any place else we can go? And so the last non-staff place we can go in our budget was that document digitization plan. So what I'm proposing to all of you is that we can reduce that proposed number from 75,000 to 20,000. And so what that means is we would use the 20,000 and apply it to the work that's underway now to digitize all of our special education records. And we're gearing up for a transition to a new IEP system in July. The remaining money was slated to use to purchase a piece of software to aid the rest of our document digitization, beginning with our financial services office. And so by making that reduction, we just kick the plan out a year. So that picks up $50,000, 55, I guess. We've also, we've renegotiated the transportation contract and extended it with STA. And so we had estimated a 4% increase. The revised increase for 2022-23 is 2.5%. So we were able to pick up some savings there as well. It was, I think, about 60,000. So we're making a reduction in 2 transportation lines. One is the special education and district transportation line, and the second is in the main contract. So if you take all of those reductions, that reduces the revised operating budget proposal to $87,112,862, which represents an increase of $2,308,647, or a 2.72 increase, as opposed to the original 2.99% increase. And then on to the operating capital revisions. You'll recall from the conversation last week, in working with Jose Figueroa, our facilities manager, and Chris Burney, we had to make a couple of shifts. One, we have been engaged in an elevator replacement plan for several years, and the elevators were inadvertently excluded from that original proposal. We have to continue with this elevator replacement plan, so those were added. Chris recommended that rather than go forward with flooring replacement at Middlebrook, we conduct the subfloor study first. And so we added an amount to conduct the subfloor study. We added the amount to replace an elevator, and then we removed the cost we were estimating to do the subfloor mitigation, and we removed the cost that we were estimating for flooring replacement, which also, the net effect was to reduce the total capital operating proposal to $458,202, which is about a 0.54% increase over current year spending. So all in, the total Board of Ed request would be $87,571,064, or a total of 3.26% increase over current year spending.
Can you remind me what the original operating capital proposal was?
It was around $610,000.
610?
Yes.
With the operating capital revisions, so the subfloor and the subflooring and the replacement and the study,
Is there any understanding yet if that's a bondable project?
It is no. So we're planning a tri-board meeting for, I think, the 28th.
Okay.
And hopefully by that point, Lynn would have some further information.
Okay. So just the way it would work though, with if it wound up being a bondable project and we had the money set aside, it could go to other capital projects?
I think that's a choice. So,
Okay.
I think one of my goals here is to garner some further investment from both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in ensuring that our facilities are maintained and managed. For years, as you know, the capital operating has been contained in the Board of Ed operating budget. And the problem for us is if for some reason we get the funds, we don't use the fund, or we can't complete the project, those funds go back to the town in a given year. And so one of the opportunities that we've discussed with members of the Board of Finance who serve on the Business Operations Committee, and more recently with the Board of Selectmen, if we could add a line to the Board of Selectmen operating capital, they have a 5-year time horizon in which to complete a project.
And we approved that.
And we did, yeah.
Okay.
And so, there was consensus support from the Board of Selectmen, and so the kind of last stop on, that train ride would be to have the Board of Finance approve.
Okay.
Yeah, we approved the concept formally.
Yeah,
as
no,
a
I know
board,
that we
yeah,
approved
but
the concept.
haven't-
I'm just
haven't gotten over to the
Yeah.
Board of
in
Finance
terms of
yet.
like this budget cycle
And the
and
Board
the
of
ask. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to,
Right. So I think,
piece it together a bit.
again, philosophically, that the town, right, schools and the town have a list of substantial facilities needs. And right now, they're kind of treated in isolation. And so I think it would be more fruitful if they were looked at together, and then collectively we can commit to a plan to address them all over a period of time. And then within that, make the determinations about, what needs to be in an annual operating budget and kind of pay as you go, and what can be bonded over time. And looking at the whole list, ought to help, a group of us just make some of those choices and then adhere to, or, now create a reliable timeline upon which we can depend to get the projects actually done.
Okay, I just had one more question about the document digitation. So I know that the 20,000, it has to do with, the SPED program and the IEP system.
And that's tied to changes that the state is making, correct?
That's correct. So the state has created or purchased a new IEP, a digital IEP system that all districts will be utilizing. For years we've used IEP Direct. Most districts in the state do. But we're in the process of, just converting documents and uploading documents so they'll all live in that system.
But the other digitization project was more of a nice to have.
Well, I don't personally think of it as a nice to have. I think it's it's the 21st century, it's 2022. In terms of efficiency and effectiveness, being able to have a digital repository that's on demand makes sense, and just, continuing this progression away from paper records.
Yeah. But it's something that is not tied into a system that's being implemented elsewhere, that if
Correct.
we put it off for a year, it's not going to make more complications.
No, that's right.
Okay.
In terms of operating, these are the changes, everything else that was planned is staying?
Yes.
And we're not gonna add for what we're decreasing?
I didn't hear the question, Jen.
At one point, we had talked about maybe if we weren't gonna do some of these things, we would take something from like next year and put it on this year, just to keep every year the number even. Did we decide not to do
Yeah,
that? just
no.
because
So
we're
I think
looking-
we're always monitoring our budgets, and where we have opportunities, we would try to take those opportunities.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Okay, the way I'm seeing it is, if I'm doing my math right, which could be totally wrong.
Marianne's here, so.
Oh, Marianne, I may need you. It looks like you're reducing your original operating
Yes.
budget around 227,000 or so. If you add up the defined benefit, the documents, the transportation stuff, it's around 227 or so.
That's correct.
And then it looks like the operating capital request, we haven't put in the right budget yet, but it's going there. You've reduced that request from 610 to 458, so that's about 152,000.
Roughly, yes, yes.
And then the conclusion is that if you add the 227 and the, what did I say, 152,
152, I'm a little, yeah.
you get about 379,000 in that ballpark.
Okay.
You're making her nervous without a calculator.
All right.
Right, so where we go?
Marianne
No,
likes precise numbers.
I know. Well, all right. It's
Well, if we're going precise, so for me, it was 151,798 from the capital, if you go 610 to where we are now.
Okay.
So, but,
okay. I guess what I'm finding is around a $379,000 reduction in our total ask
yes,
from where you started.
That sounds
yes.
right. Mhm.
Okay. Well, I happen to think that's pretty impressive, given how lean the budget started with. We have to address our major goals, and that requires, the mental health, the
Math
COVID
teacher.
impact,
Yep.
moving forward on our math improvement, taking steps on Portrait of the Graduate, implementing new high school courses. So looking through this budget, most categories are either flat or are relatively flat, that have anything in our control. Utilities have gone up. Obviously, labor is subject to contracts. That's gone up. We have added some staff year to year, but we have looked at each and every one of those people. I know there's requests to add more staff, and we looked at that, and, you know, we had the sort of push-pull and heard from everyone. So I think this is, what I'm trying to say is I think it's as lean as we can make it and still accomplish our goals.
I think that that's a correct assessment. I think I would add on to that, that this is my third budget. And I think each year we make statements like that, and I am just increasingly concerned over the trend of the last 5 years or so, that we're getting to the point that we're no longer really going to be able to advance and service our goals and our missions if we keep on carrying this lean. And so I think that this year does it, but I just want to put it out there that I'm becoming increasingly concerned about our expectations and what our budget can carry.
Yeah, the slide that has the budget request for the last umpteen years, it is very lean, very lean.
Yeah.
And this one, it's stretched thin, but.
It's manageable.
It's, yeah. But I do think that, you know, that making this reduction, I think we've gone as far as we can go. And you know, and some of it was, you know, sort of, and I don't want to say easy, but the defined benefit thing was an accounting thing.
Yes.
That, you know, it didn't take away anything, is my point.
Yep.
So.
It was welcome news.
Yeah, it was welcome news, exactly. And the same thing with transportation, and the digitization is something that is not started, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be terrible to wait one more year.
We're gonna wait another year.
All right. Okay, so anybody have any other comments on the budget, or is there a motion to approve the proposed budget as revised tonight by the superintendent? Because then it's ours.
I so move.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. All right, Jen, I saw Jen first, sorry.
No worries. And I just want to say thank you, Kevin. I think that's awesome news, that update to that.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Mandy?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, just, thank you. All right, so there's no opposition, so it's unanimously approved, and it's now the Board of Education's proposed budget for next year. So thank you, Dr. Smith, and your entire staff. Okay, now I gotta find the agenda. Sorry, I got lost. Thank you. Future business. Our next regular meeting is March 3rd, but you heard Dr. Smith refer to February 28th.
I think it's 28, yeah.
That's not confirmed yet. Maybe it is or it isn't, but it's
Yeah,
being
I'm not
looked
sure.
at as a tri-board meeting to talk about capital operating expenses and possible bonding issues, you know, just what the parameters are. And then the Board of Finance approved March 23rd as our public hearing date with them. They hold a public hearing. The hearing that they're going to hold on the Board of Ed budget is March 23rd. I think that's a Wednesday.
All right,
Okay.
so do we definitely have a meeting on February 28th?
Well, it's a probable, but not confirmed yet. Am I right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
if
it was
it's
a
confirmed or not.
date that I heard was requested.
It's not confirmed yet. I was speaking with Jackie today, but it's not, it's February 28th or March, it's the Monday or Wednesday night right now.
Okay, so,
We'll try to confirm it soon.
yeah, I'll get it out to you as soon as it's confirmed, one way or the other.
But March 23rd is definite.
But March
with the
20,
BOE.
yeah, March 23rd is definite because the Board of Finance voted on that. Okay, that leads us to comments from the public.
There's a hand raised
here.
Hi, it's me again, Laura Tanechka, I'm Forrest.
I'm sorry?
Do I have to, every time I speak, 9 Forest Lane,
Yeah,
Florence
it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Okay. So thank you, and fun fact, in World War I and World War II, schools were still open, provided they were still standing or not converted to the war effort, and without gas masks. So we can do this, okay? We can do this. Thankfully, in December, at the end of it, we abandoned this intrusive and detrimental contract tracing, which led to quarantining of healthy children and remote learning that we know doesn't work. So please, please don't bring back contract tracing. More or less, since after the contract tracing is no longer an issue, about maybe 6 kids in my son's class had COVID, but luckily the healthy children were able to be in school, and those that were not were able to actually be home, recover, and came back to school. So it did not cause nearly as much chaos as contract tracing, quarantining had before. I feel like since November 13th, when my daughter was quarantined, my life had not gone back to normal. So I thank the pickup, drop-off, front office, and nurses staff for helping me with my son who had a broken leg and other issues. And I'm waiting for normalcy to come back, probably like everyone else. So please, please don't bring back contract tracing, because it only leads to quarantining and remote learning. That doesn't work. And I wanted to get a little more clarification, if possible, how that's going to happen with the testing before returning to school, and also if during vacation we could have access to the home testing to test before returning to school. And then I wanted to say that I know we have the federal funding for it, but it doesn't mean we should do it, because on-site testing at the schools is disruptive. My children are wondering where their friends are going during recess, during lunch, and I'm hoping that the next step would be to remove on-site testing from the schools as well. If things were not problematic and troublesome, or potentially problematic and troublesome, there would be no need for litigation, and lawyers would be out of a job, very much so. And so I'm hoping that would be the next step in this endemic. And just like federal funding, and doesn't mean we have to use it for that purpose. Same thing with the snow day for remote learning. I don't know how much remote learning other people were doing during that snow day, ice day. I know a lot of them probably were not, because that's the story with remote learning. So just because it's available doesn't mean we need to necessarily utilize it the way we have. And I thank you again, and have a good night.
Thank you. Was there a hand raised remotely? Okay. Maybe. Okay. Let me let somebody in. Oh, okay.
Thanks.
There we go.
Jared Martin. Jared, could you unmute your mic?
Sorry, I'm that guy. I just want to say thank you all very much. I really do appreciate that you held this board in person. I appreciate that there are certainly difficult topics that we have conversations about, and I understand that after 2 years that this was one that was charged, and I really admire and have to give you all credit for stepping up to the plate and holding this in person, and thank you. One of the things I would ask you to consider, and this would be obviously put towards Kevin and Deb, is I do not believe busing is a federal mandate, and the only reason why I say that is you have other states, such as a Texas or Florida, that do not have masking on buses themselves. Now, I'm not an expert in this area, so I would ask, just toss that over to you and ask you if you could please take a look a little further into this, to see whether or not it truly is a federal issue, or whether this is something that has a little bit more ambiguity that we can look into. The other thing I would ask regarding budgeting. So one of the things would be if we can start to try to think about budgeting as a per pupil spend as opposed to just an overall number. I appreciate that some folks are saying that, we're getting bare bones on budgeting, but our overall attendance, our pupils in the school district are going down. So therefore, our per pupil expenditures are still going up, and we are very close to being on par with our DRG equivalents. So I think that we should think about things more in that realm. Additionally, one of the things that I would ask from a budgeting is, as far as money spent, one of my understandings was much of, or a fair amount of the money that was supposed to be spent from the COVID dollars was towards HVAC ventilation. My understanding was the new gym within Millbrook has already had mold problems again at this time. So if we have any leeway to be able to redirect any of that money in order to get some of these things sorted out, so we have a permanent solution to what seems to be a recurrent problem, I would really appreciate that. And the last thing I just have to say is, wish you all a great winter break, and see you guys in March.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there one more? Okay. Laura Pascalidis.
Hi, my name is Laura Pascalidis. I'm at 39-8 Chestnut Hill. The only thing that I'd like to bring up is the fact I'm not for or against of what being discussed. I'm just worried about the few that are being compromised in our school, and I would like that be also discussed, and maybe even if it's meet with the parents of those to figure out how we can keep those kids in school, because I think every child matters. And as somebody that last year wasn't able to put her child in school because we had an immune compromised situation, their emotional well-being matters just as much as everybody else's. So it would just be nice to see what steps you're taking to make sure that every child can go to school. And that's all I have to say.
No, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody in the room. No. Okay. One more?
Are you able to repeat the difference between mask recommended and mask optional? Just one more time. I was trying to listen before, but I missed it.
Are we answering the question?
Is it okay to?
Okay, briefly, sure.
Yeah, so in terms of enforcement, there's really not a difference. So the way that I'm interpreting the state guidance was that Commissioner of Department of Public Health was recommending mask optional. I think the difference for us locally and for me personally is that our preschool students are not yet vaccine eligible. And so we also know that vaccines help to mitigate against the spread of COVID-19. They're one of the strongest mitigation strategies. So in light of the fact that those students are not yet eligible, I'm recommending the board just approved a recommendation that anyone in the preschool wear a mask.
Got it. Okay, cool. I'm only asking because my son is 4 years old. He's in the program for reasons that are meant to help him with his development and speech, and we do intend to take his mask off when he comes.
Sure.
We know that he's not vaccinated, but as we've also seen in the Delta variant, his natural immunity, we've had COVID as a family, he's not vaccinated, but he might be as well, if not more protected than those that have been vaccinated. We don't know yet what that looks like for Omicron, but based off what we saw from Delta, it might even be better and more effective, and we will learn that soon. So I would just ask that we're taking that into account, when we're making those decisions. We're not talking about natural immunity rates in classes, and we should be able to substitute that in, especially for children that are of such a low age, when we know that there's other obvious and possibly more detrimental side effects to going that route, specifically in young males. So I would just ask that we're looking at this holistically when we make some of those decisions, and that parents of kids that are in the preschool get a chance to come and sort of voice those and make sure that those are being heard before a decision is made in response to something that's happening in the public health situation. Because my son being in the school for the last couple of years, we've watched things happen all over Fairfield County. Here in Wilton, the numbers in the Miller Driscoll School have really not moved at all. And there's a transmissibility, obviously, clearly, with kids of that age that I would almost love to see us look at it unanimously with the rest of, right, that we're making the right decisions about all of those kids' ages, and that we don't jump to a conclusion that says, hey, let's put the 4-year-olds back in masks because they're not vaccinated, when wasn't really an effective strategy in the first place. So that's my only sense on that. Just want to make sure that we get a chance to keep that top of mind as we respond to what happens as we move forward. So,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read the public comment that we got, or do you want?
We're not
no?
reading
Is there, I think it was hands raised, right?
It was, we got a written one. Do you want to read it or not do it because they have the option to have joined
Yeah.
and have raised their hand?
What's the will of the group? I mean, is it short, is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. It's Linda DiMatteo, 252 Mountain Road. Good evening. I'm writing in regards to mask choice in the below memo released by the Office of Early Childhood. The legislature has extended the public health emergency and a number of executive orders. The requirement for COVID-19 vaccination and testing by state employees and covered workers in schools and child care facilities was not extended and is no longer in effect as of today, February 15th, 2022. We will stop monitoring compliance with vaccination and testing immediately. While the authority to require masks in schools and child care is extended through June 30th, 2022, the Office of Early Childhood will no longer mandate mask wearing for children and staff starting March 1st, 2022. I would like to be able to volunteer in my children's classrooms without having to show any paper besides my driver's license. I am sick of being segregated, and I will not subject myself to testing for something I do not have. If I feel sick, I will stay home. These children should have a choice after the 28th and indefinitely. Whomever wishes to continue masking can. No one is stopping them. I do not force medical interventions on other people's children. All I ask is they do the same. Also, the emails and Good Morning Wilton articles reiterating that there was uncivil behavior from parents at the last board meeting is veering down the road of calling parents domestic terrorists, which we saw from radical boards across America. This is small town Wilton. We do not raise our voices. We cry for our children. We only wish you would do the same.
Thank you. All right, we've concluded our business. We know what our future meetings are, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a great February break. Can't call it spring yet, but have a great, great February break. Okay. That's it. Okay.